obviously a business video for business people, but it's actually something we're going to use this year at Lake Point, that theme with our life groups, challenging them to turn up the heat in certain areas of life groups. And I think it's, of course, you saw in that little clip, it said you are responsible. We know that's not all, it's not just all you, it's us and the Holy Spirit are responsible for what happens in our churches, in our lives. But we're going to adapt that. We're going to challenge our leaders. Where do we need to turn up the heat? 1 degree in your life group. 1 degree in how you teach. Or you put a little bit more effort into preparing to teach. How you care for people. How you reach out to people. And it also, to me, works with church-wide. You heard Steve last night say, you can make one change for the better and no one's going to complain. That's preach better. Turn up the degree 1 notch on how you prepare and how you preach and how effective you are with the time you have. So I just wanted to show you that, kind of show you a little bit. We're going to be doing our August huddle. It'll all be decorated with the water theme and the dry ice boiling and all this kind of stuff when they come in, and the steam, and then we're going to introduce that theme, and we'll have goals underneath each part of a life group, which I'm going to show you the different parts of life groups as we do them, where we'll challenge them to become a 212 life group, and we're going to turn it up this year. We're going to be better than we were last year, so that's kind of what that was about. We're going to spend some time today really going through our model of life groups and how we do what we talked about yesterday of making disciples. And this is the disciple-making organization of our church. And you should have this handout there in the middle of your table. You might want to be jotting down some things. As I mentioned yesterday, this is pretty much our model of our church on what we try to accomplish. We think people are going to show up in big church first. That's the front door. If they're going to come to church, they're probably going to show up there. And it's usually on the arm of a friend that's invited them. Very rarely they just wander into church unless they have a church background. Most of the time someone's had to work on them to get them to even try it. And a lot of times it's big church they come to first. And we will say regularly in big church, you can come to big church for years and not really be a part of our church. And Steve, if he was here today, he would say his job is to get people from big church to life group. And if we're not growing in life group, he thinks he's not doing his job, because he has the platform on Sunday morning to constantly push people to get connected and to go deeper relationally. Don't just come sit in the auditorium. That's not going to, it's going to help you grow, but it's not going to grow you like being with an accountable friend that's walking through life with you. And so we have big church and we have small church, and that's what we call a life group. Most of our life groups meet on campus around the worship hours. We have a few that meet off campus at other times. We have some that meet on Wednesday night at our campus and around the community. But the majority of them meet around the worship hours on the weekend. Both Saturday night, we have a full schedule on Saturday night, and Sunday at 9:30, 11, and also 8:15. We have them at our central campus. So life groups are really like mid-sized groups, and there's a reason why we let them get a little larger. It's because of all that we ask them to do. We ask them to really function like a small church. And everything I'm going to say here, I think applies if you have one life group, one adult class, or if you have 20, or if you have 100. I mean, to me, the principles we're going to talk about work in any size church. It's just turn up the heat, expect more out of your Sunday school or your Bible study or your small groups, your life group, whatever you call it. It's expecting more out of them. And so ours are going to be life group, and then after life group, the progression, the growth process is you're going to get in a growth group. And we talked about that yesterday. Why do we do both? Because to me, you cannot have the close relationship, the casual atmosphere in a life group on a Sunday morning that you can in a home with, one couple with 4 couples, one single adult with 5 single adults. You're going to build better relationship, get to know each other even better than you can on a Sunday morning, maybe with 10 couples in a room, or that's your largest class maybe. So we get into growth groups. My thing with growth groups is they are limited because most of ours are all co-ed, because we have couples life groups, and so they're in a growth group that's co-ed. Well, you really can't do and shouldn't do real spiritual and how you're living your life accountability in a co-ed group. You shouldn't have men discussing men's issues and men's temptations in front of other ladies, and ladies aren't going to share in front of other men, nor should they. So our goal is to get people from big church down to where they got 4 brothers and 4 sisters that are their best friends. And if we can get people down to that level, they're not going to leave our church. And that's going to be their family. That's where they're going to really get connected. That's what you call closing the back door, when you can get that accomplished. But it all comes out of the one organization of a life group. And when I first got to Lake Point about 18 years ago, I was like, tell me about all the groups that we have here. And they were telling me about the men's groups, the ladies' groups, Sunday school, small groups, discipleship groups, all these groups, recovery groups. And I said, okay, now show me who's meeting in these. How often are they meeting? What are they studying? And the only thing they could show me was Sunday school. Here's what we know we have, who we have coming, and what we're doing in Sunday school. The other groups, they were like real loosey-goosey, weren't sure what was going on in them. And I quickly thought, we need one organization that we're going to do church through. And that's when we started working on the life group model. Back then we called it Adult Bible Fellowship. And we just changed the name 2 years ago to Life Group, just because we had been in that name for so many years. Why did we change it back then to Adult Bible Fellowship? One reason is because we have the Saturday night. Can't have Sunday school on Saturday night, The other is I think the term Sunday school is a barrier to a lot of people from other denominations that don't understand what Sunday school is. They think it's all for kids. That's where you send the kids while we're in church. And sometimes it's gotten a negative connotation, like it's dated and all that. So we just changed the name to Adult Bible Fellowship all those years ago, and then 2 years ago we rebranded everything and changed it to life groups, and I kind of like the term better. So let's look at some things here. Before we started with going through the model, this is something that's out there a lot today, different types of ways of doing groups. I was just in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with a guy from San Diego, well-known preacher, Larry Osborne. And, I was hearing his model, and I really liked a lot of what he was saying. But I struggled with part of it, and that part was we're all about getting people engaged together, and that's our goal as our church. But we're only going to get together in Bible study 3 semesters, 10 weeks long, and then we're going to take the whole summer off, and you don't have to stay in that group. You can get in another group. And I was walking out of there going, how is that going to engage people relationally? Basically you're getting them into an elective Bible study that they get to choose, and they may or may not see those people that were in their next group. And to me, it's not as good a model as connecting people in a group year-round. And so I jotted down a few thoughts on that. Why is, to me, it more effective to do year-round groups? Deeper relationships can be developed. I know a lot of those churches that do that kind of semester thing, and we're going to blow them up every 10 weeks and start over and take the summer off. They say, well, they can stay with their group and just go to the next topic. But to me, that doesn't always happen. You have people that fall through. They have people that get inactive, and no one's really looking after those people, and the relationships don't form to me like that. We do those kind of things. We call them hot topics, but we do them to hook people into the existing life groups. They aren't just standing alone doing hot topics. So I think you get better relationships if they're ongoing, year-round groups. More opportunities for actual Bible study. If we did 10-week trimesters and took the summer off, think about your people. How often are they there in a 10-week period? Maybe your most faithful people are there 6 out of 10 weeks. Maybe 7 if you're stretching it. Very few people are there 10 out of 10 weeks in this day and age. So you're looking at, okay, if they're there 6 out of 10 and we do 3 of those a year, 18 times they're getting Bible study. And the Bible study is if it starts on time and if the teacher is prepared and if the teacher actually has time to teach, because the other guy's up there telling jokes and doing stuff while he's supposed to be teaching, So Bible study is the key to having these groups. So we want to have more opportunities to do Bible study. And the more times you meet, obviously, the more times you have an opportunity for Bible study versus let's do less. One of the things he was saying was, we're there to take care of the ponies. We're there to take care of the people who are serving, and we don't want them to have to meet every week, And my thing to that was, that's why we have co-teachers. That's why we have almost every one of our life groups doesn't just have one teacher. They got 2 teachers. Some of them have 3 teachers. And so they're giving the ponies a break, but they're not destroying the group to do that. And so I think that makes more sense to me anyway. These are just my opinions. Having to restart all groups takes more time and energy than coaching ongoing groups. I mean, if you have to start over, I know the energy behind that, because when you do hot topics, it takes a lot of energy and publicity. Okay, we're starting these groups over, and you get to pick a Bible study you want to go to. A lot more energy than just coaching the ongoing groups that are going and trying to raise the temperature or how effective they are. I mean, building a relationship with those teachers, and we're resourcing our teachers and helping them and challenging them to be better, helping solve problems. So to me, it takes more energy to do the trimester thing and start over. And I certainly couldn't comprehend taking a whole summer off, because that really takes a huge effort. Now we got to totally reorganize for the fall. I'd much rather run them year-round and add life to them and add energy to them as we're going, not blow up the whole thing. Then I put new members can be assimilated any week. Problem I have with those things that start and stop like that is you have gaps. And you have people coming to your church and they're going, how do I get attached? How do I get connected to a group? Well, we're taking a month off now. So, when you come back in a month, we're going to be having these groups again. Well, to me, that doesn't answer the question, to someone that has a need right then. I mean, what if they're going, I have a need to be connected to other brothers and sisters in Christ right now. I need support. Okay, well, a month from now you can find that. I like it better when we can assimilate people immediately. Any week they walk through our door, we have something for them. And I think that's a better way of getting people assimilated. Short-term hot topic classes can be offered to hook people into the ongoing classes. Mentioned that already. We do those hot topics throughout the year, about 3 times a year. They're about 4 weeks long, to hook people into our ongoing classes. And if you're in a church, say, with 3 adult classes, you may have one hot topic that you offer. Maybe it's called Starting Point, and it's for new believers. And the whole goal is, at the end of that class, you're hooking them into an existing class. That's the whole goal, is getting them connected to a group. Maybe it's wherever what your demographic is what your hot topic might be. If you're trying to reach young families, you may do a hot topic on, how to raise preschoolers, and you have an expert come teach that. We have a class for expectant parents, and I have a pediatric physician in our town teach that. And so people want to go just because he's the teacher. Purposeful engagement. If you're in a demographic of a lot of young folks and getting married and all that, that's huge. We do that in Texas. If you can get certified, and it saves the marriage license fee if you go to a premarital training class. And so we're certified in that. And so we have couples that'll come take that class that don't even know anything about our church because they're saving $100, And it's so interesting. We'll have that purposeful engagement. And I remember last time we had it, we had to add another hour because our room was too full. We had about 40 couples in 1 hour come to that class, and half of them were living together. You think about that. I'm going to a church for premarital, and we're living together, and we don't see anything wrong with that. That's the kind of people you want to reach, isn't it? What if you were going, oh, that's terrible, you cannot come to this class. Now they're going to hear first off about marriage and why it's biblical, and if you are doing that, living together, that you need to abstain before you get married, and they're going to hear that message. But we're not going to say you are no longer welcome, because those are people we're reaching. Caring for members is more difficult when groups disperse every 10 weeks and take the summer off. I couldn't imagine taking care of all of our people if these groups just blew up. And, that's the whole reason we require people to join a life group. You cannot be in our church if you're not willing, because they're going to fall through the cracks. There's a large church in Dallas. I was talking to the staff one day, and at the time, they're not running this anymore, but at the time, they had like 15,000 in worship, and they were running 3,000 in small groups. And I said, so what happens to the other 12,000 if they have a need in their life? And they were like, we don't know about it. No, but, we don't really do weddings or funerals, or we don't do hospital visits, because unless they're in a small group, their small group takes care of them. Otherwise, we don't know about it. And I said, so are you a church of 15,000 or are you a church of 3,000? Because to me, they were a church of 3,000, because that's the only people they were really taking care of. So taking time off in between sounds like a good idea, but it really is disruptive to me on the care. Well, those are some of my thoughts on that. Just put those down the other day and thought I'd share them with you, because I know that's out there a lot. Let's look at different parts of a life group. The L stands for living for others, that we are taking care of each other and that we're serving other people. And that's the first thing I wanted our people to understand. It's not about yourself. It's about caring for other people in your class and caring for other people in the community, the nation, and around the world, doing missions together. Interactive Bible study. Notice the word interactive and the word Bible. It's about Bible study is why we're having these groups. And it's about being able to talk. The last thing we want is a teacher in a Bible study class standing behind one of these, and some of you know what I'm talking about. You got the old, wooden one from the old sanctuary, and the old teacher still standing behind it, like he's preaching every week. We don't want that. We want these kind of things. You can lower the teacher sitting down, eyeball to eyeball. Now, we'll have some bistro tables and stools in some of our classes, but it's about interaction. It's about, I don't understand that passage. Can we talk about it? You can't do that in big church. I remember growing up at Hyde Park Baptist Church in Austin, Texas. We were like a block from the Austin State School. And sometimes we'd have some crazy people escape and come into the service. I remember I was like 10 years old. It was on a Sunday night service. Most exciting Sunday night service I'd ever been in. Because right when the preacher's preaching, this guy stands up and he goes, "Get thee behind me, Satan, get thee behind me." And he's in a trance, and I've never seen deacons move faster. They drug that guy out the back, and I got up and went out with him. You know, being a minister's kid, I thought, I'm going to go see what they're going to do to this guy. Well, they took him down to the fellowship hall, and I don't really know what happened to him. He just kind of left. I don't know what happened to him, but I went home. I told Dad, I said, I learned something tonight. Don't ever ask a question in big church. You know, don't speak up in big church. You're going to be drug out the back and never seen again. And so you can't ask a question in big church. But why can't we in small church? Why can't we be interactive? And so many of our teachers get in this, I'm going to preach every week. I've got all this material to cover. Don't dare ask me a question. Plus, I don't want to be stumped. I don't want to look dumb. Well, that's not what it's about. It's about I'm on a journey with you, and I am learning with you. And I may not know the answer, but we'll find it together. Next week, I'll bring it back. I'll ask the pastor. I'll ask you guys, research and tell me this question. So interaction. Then we've got fellowship. Fellowship is building a sense of koinonia, this what we have in common in Christ, that we're a community. It's also about having fun together, you know. A lot of times, especially up in, where you got the hiking and the skiing and the outdoorsy up here in this part of the country, and people think, Chris, why would I want to go to church? You know, it's boring and it's not fun, and Christians are boring. Well, that's the last thing. We want our groups to have fun together. We want them to be going skiing together. We want them to go on retreats and campouts and do stuff that are fun, and the world sees that going, these people aren't weird. They actually know how to have fun, and they don't have to get drunk to do it, you know. So we want our groups to have fun and have great fellowship. And then the last thing is encouragement. We used to call it accountability, but I needed an E for the acrostic, so we changed it to encouragement. But I actually like the word encouragement better. It's not as scary as, hey, we want to encourage you in the faith and in your life, or I'm going to hold you accountable for how you're living. You know, it just sounds a little bit better, but it can accomplish the same thing. I believe there's nowhere in the life of most of our churches that this is going to happen. Men with men, ladies with ladies, if we don't set it up in our system, in our process for this to happen. You know, it doesn't happen in big church. You don't have a guy during the welcome turn around to another guy and say, tell me how you've been living this week. Doesn't happen. Probably doesn't even happen in Sunday morning in life group, because you've got a co-ed group. You got some people in there that'll never share. You got some people that won't ever be quiet, you know, and so you don't have a whole lot of time for that kind of interaction. It happens when men are with men, ladies are with ladies. Now, some of ours will go to breakfast once a week with the men before work, and they'll have some encouragement time. But we'll talk more about that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish in a life group. It's like a small church within the church. It's not really Sunday school. I like to say it's Sunday school on steroids, you know. It's what we're expecting. Now, you can't do all this without an organization behind it. And you've got the teacher, who we see as a pastor of a small church. And they're going to be over the spiritual needs of that class. And that even means they're going to make sure that when they go in the hospital in that class, the teacher or someone from the class is going to be there for them. You know? You heard Steve yesterday say, we're here to give the ministry to the volunteers and see them as ministers. We really believe that. When people join our church and they go to the workshop, they're going to hear Steve say, I don't have the gift of hospital, but I can tell you this, someone from your life group will be there for you. That's our pledge and promise to you from a church. And that's how we set it up, and that's how our people receive it. And so the pastor doesn't have to be at every hospital visitation. It's covered. And sometimes we find out as a church that so-and-so has been in a hospital for 3 days, and the pastoral staff didn't even know about it. And we're like, oh, man, we're so sorry. Y'all are going home today. We didn't even know. Hey, man, our life group has been all over it. They have been here every day. They're taking our kids, picking them up from school. They even came over and mowed the yard. They got food lined up for the next 2 weeks. We've never felt more love, you know. And the staff, we didn't even know about it. And, you know, that takes a while. And, of course, the smaller your church, the more expectation on you to be there every time. But you can still start changing that philosophy and going, this is about life groups ministering to their people. So you got the teacher that's over the pastoral needs and ministry needs of the class. And when we have a position called a coordinator of a life group, and they're like the pastor of education over each small church. So you got the teacher, the pastor, and the minister of education over a life group working together. Why do I like both of those? Because not all the time is the teacher a good administrator, or are they good at things, getting people to plug in and start serving, you know. And sometimes a administrator doesn't have the gift of teaching, but when they come and work together, they can get a lot done, and it doesn't burn the teacher out. A lot of times the teacher in most of our classes has to do everything. They got to teach, minister, follow up, outreach, care, fellowship plan, all those things, and they burn out. And they're like, I can't do all this. And that's why we have a helper. Now, the teacher is the ultimate authority, like a pastor in a church, because they're over the spiritual development of people. But the coordinator's right there with them, helping take care of things. That right there can help your teachers succeed. If you go back and just say, hey, do y'all have someone that's your right-hand person that's really helping you run this class? Here's some ideas of you may want to recruit somebody like that. So that's a good thing. We'll talk more about that in a minute. All right, living for others, care, taking care of each other is vital. We talk about people have rights. If they're going to be a member of a life group or a small group or whatever you call yours, people have rights. And one of the rights is that they're known by name. Now, you may think, well, that's crazy. Of course, we're going to know them by name. But there are some churches and some groups that grow and get large, and all of a sudden people look up and they're welcoming people as a guest, and they're like, I've been a member here for 5 years. How long have you been coming? You know, and because they quit coming for a year, and people forget who they are. That's why we all wear name tags like the ones you have on right now. Every one of our life group members has a name tag like that, custom made for them, that we wear every week. When people are coming through the doors, we want them, all of us have name tags on. So we learn each other's names. A guest gets to learn everybody's name. It also tells your people, we're expecting new people. You know, because sometimes the classes will go, why in the world do we need to wear name tags? You know, it's always us 15 people, and we don't ever have any. It's always, and I'm like, that's why it's always you, because you're not expecting any new people, and you're not getting any new people. And then we got classes that get it, and they're like wearing name tags because every week someone new's coming through the door, and they're like, it's too awkward to stick a name tag on a guest and nobody else has a name tag on, because they're the ones that need to learn everyone's names. So we just make them for everyone. Ministered to by need. We think people have a right, if they're on a roll of a life group, to be ministered to by need. We can't do that if you don't know what's going on in their life. Missed when absent. We do the worst job on this one at our church, because almost every week our rooms feel like they're full. And they're not. I mean, they're full, but 2/3 of the people on the roll aren't there that week. And is anybody missing them and calling them? You know, and you got to be organized for that, for people to miss them. Then, froze up on me. There it is. Nurtured in love. We want to nurture people in love and take care of them. And then experience the Word through life-changing Bible study. We think people have rights if they're going to be a member of a class. Those are the rights they have. Now, everything I'm outlining for you today as a pastor is only going to help you. You know, sometimes preachers will ask me and they'll say, well, if we treat these like small churches within our church, is that not going to run the risk of them just going and starting their own church? Or, you know, are they going to get together and start having bad doctrine or get together and do this and that? Well, that's where the coaching and the training and the recruiting and all that up front comes in, and then you can give them freedom to run their life group, and in the long run, it's going to help your ministry, because you're giving the ministry away, and you're training your people to understand, if I'm in a life group, my life group is my church. That's who's going to really take care of me. That's, you know, and the other thing it does is when you get that in your people's minds that this is their church, you can continue to grow. You know, back in our early day, we used to have church-wide picnics. Now, if we had a church-wide picnic, we'd have to, you know, rent the Dallas arena to have a gathering, and it wouldn't make sense. But we have church-wide picnics every week. They're called life group fellowships. And we say, that's your church-wide picnic. And that people are okay with that because they're going, that's my church. That's why we can start multiple hours. That's why we can have Saturday night. And those Saturday night people have never even seen the Sunday morning people. But they all feel like they're a part of Lake Point Church because their church is their life group. And so it helps you expand. One of the biggest barriers to church growth is, well, we like to be able to all get together and still have fellowships. And we want it all in 1 hour because we're not going to see each other anymore if we don't do 1 hour of Bible study. Well, you're basically putting a lid right there on what your church can do in the facility you have, because it's all going to max out eventually. And if that's what your goal is, that's what you're going to get. I had a preacher tell me that one time. He said, well, we're going to get, our church will be, you know, probably at about 1,500 someday, and that's all we're ever going to do, but that's good. And I thought, well, that's great. And that church is like a 1.5 miles from our church, and they were there before we were, you know, and that's what they got. And they've been running about 1,300 for the last 30 years, you know, while we've been over there and moved over down the street from them and, you know, are running what we have now. It's because we've gone, that's not good enough. We're not going to put a lid on it. And so it's all about getting our people thinking, this is my small church. The living for others, the care, the best care, obviously the life group's responsible for caring for their members. If they're on the roll, we expect the life group to minister to them. But even better care is going to happen when they get in a growth group. Growth groups, remember, come out of a life group. It's people that want to go the next step in relationships, in connection. Not everyone, this is our philosophy, not everybody on a life group role is going to automatically be in a growth group. We only go with people who want to get in a growth group. You know, the old care group structure in Southern Baptist Sunday School, always had issues with that because we'd put the whole role in a care group and give this old boy 10 names and say, now we want you to call them every week. Well, half of them haven't been in a year. And you want me to call them every week when they don't even come anymore? Okay. In the first week, we set him up to fail. You know, and he might call and get chewed out. Why are you calling me? I don't even go to that church. So our philosophy is, let's work on the people who want to grow more. And we're not going to forget the inactives. We're going to, about 4 times a year, make a list. Say, these people have not attended in the last quarter. We want you in your class to get a hold of them and welcome them back. But we're going to concentrate more on the people who want to keep growing. And those are the people that get in a growth group. And for us, a growth group is going to get together probably about twice a month. One time it may just be having fun together. Let's take our families, go to the park. Let's go on a fellowship. Let's have fellowship together. The other time it might be let's meet in a home and do some Bible study together, a topic that our group wanted to choose. And so that's kind of what our growth groups are about. We don't have to have them do Bible study every week because we're already doing that in the life group. And the beauty is they get to see those other people in their life group that aren't in their growth group. They still have that fellowship with them, but then they have the special connection with these 5 singles or 4 other couples that they're in a growth group with. That's kind of hard to see all those things up there, but basically the growth group is for fellowship, care, discipleship, and encouragement. Even in a growth group, it's a process. You know, you don't just form a growth group and go all the way to encouragement. We usually form them and go, it's about having fellowship together and taking care of each other. That's the first stage, because that's a lot easier sell. Wouldn't you like to be in a group and have fun together and also take care of each other? That's first phase of a growth group. Then we say, along about a couple of months after you get to know each other, talk about what you want to study together. And we're going to provide some choices for you to look at. 4th stage is men with men, ladies with ladies. Let's form this encouragement, accountability relationship. Some groups do it immediately because they're already best friends, you know, and so they jump all the way to that stage. Others, it's going to take a while to gel and get to know each other. Some groups never get off fellowship, you know. And to me, they're stuck. We want them to progress and get to where they're down to having encouragement, men with men, ladies with ladies. That's a full functioning growth group. And so our goal is everyone in a life group would get in a growth group. Right now, it's about 50% of our active life group people also choose to be in a growth group. Questions on that? Anything? Yes? Yes, you can go online. You can look at our website and under life groups, and there's some growth group section that outlines a lot of this. There's growth group resources, things that we suggest them to use. We have our curriculum online, and I'll talk about that in a minute, for our life groups, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but we have some stuff online. Yes, sir. Yes. Besides the huddles that we do quarterly and the coaching that we do, because I have 20 coaches that might have between 5 and some of them have as many as 25 life groups under them. And so they are coaching their teachers on a personal basis. They're going by their rooms every week. They're taking them to breakfast. They're taking them to coffee. They're talking about how they're doing as a life group. Then we have, for us, with doing the same lessons, we have 180 life groups. And so all 180 life groups are teaching the same lesson every week. And we write our own lesson. And so we record Dr. Timothy Warren, who's at Dallas Theological Seminary. He's on my adult staff as well. And he writes the biblical background of the lesson every week, where we record him teaching his class a week ahead, and our teachers can go on and watch him teach. And any other church that's using our lessons can do the same thing. So that's how we kind of equip the teacher with the scripture. And that's worked really well. And then we'll do potential teacher training for folks that are considering becoming a teacher. And where do we find those people? From our existing teachers. Because first thing on their job description is I'm going to have an apprentice that I'm going to train up as a future teacher. And so they are working with someone in their class, letting them teach once a month, talking about how they're doing. And then we just send an email out to our teachers and say, is your apprentice ready to go to the next level? And because we're fixing to offer potential teacher training. And then we get a class just from that response. And we'll do that one on Sunday morning at 9:30 hour, and it's 3 weeks long, the potential teacher class.
In the process of all the training you just mentioned, do you use that same vehicle for accountability?
Same vehicle for how the class is doing?
Yeah, and how they're doing, how they're teaching it, if they're staying on target.
Yeah, it's really the coaching, because the coach would float in there and actually sit in the class and observe. Also, we asked the coordinator of the class twice a year to fill out a kind of an assessment of how their class is doing and how they're organized and if they have growth groups and who's in the growth groups and all that stuff. So that's kind of our accountability. It's really the coach is the key. You know, if you're in a church and you have 4 adult classes and you're the only staff member, you ought to have a volunteer that is your coach over those. You know, maybe you keep 2 that's closer to your demographic age, and then you get someone to take on 2 others. So you're coaching 2 and they're coaching 2, but you know what's going on. You're pastoring that teacher, and they know who to go to when they need something. That's what our coaches are there for. Great question. All right, care is huge, part of it. Living for others, missions, serving together. This will change the life of your small groups. When you get them to become missional, maybe yours are already there, but we are very intentional about every class being missional and serving other people together. This is how we do all of our missions church-wide. And so first we say everyone's a minister. You know, everyone that's a volunteer is a minister. Everyone has a spiritual gift. Everybody ought to be using that gift. So we created a ministry for every level of maturity and commitment. I have about 25 job descriptions for someone in a life group because my goal was create something for everyone in the group to do, you know. And so I have the job from the guy that says, don't ask me to pray out loud, please. Don't ever ask me to read the Bible, but I'll make sure the coffee's ready and the room's set up. Okay, we're going to call you the facility coordinator for your class. And that's your job, and here's your little job description. So that kind of job all the way to the level of a teacher or a coordinator or a growth group leader. Those are more highly committed, highly trained positions. The point is that everybody ought to be doing something. And when you talk about getting people to serve in your church, you start raising that bar, saying part of being a member is serving, and you can serve in the life of your small group, and here's a way you can serve. You know, I've got it broken down by like major positions. Obviously your coordinator of the whole life group is huge, and the teacher, but underneath them, you may have a prayer coordinator, a follow-up coordinator, a fellowship coordinator, a missions coordinator, obviously the growth group coordinators that are over their growth groups. It seems like I'm forgetting somebody. Crisis care coordinator. So I got those major positions, and then underneath those positions, I tell them, now recruit the people that are going to serve with you on your team. And so that's how you get everyone in the class that's active to actually do something. And you try to line it up with their spiritual gift. Some people always, when I say that, they go, well, we only have 10 people in our class. Well, that just means 10 people have to do more. You know, if you want to do less, grow the class and then give it away. I tell our coordinators, your job is to give your whole job away. If you're doing all these jobs, you're not doing your job, because your goal is to recruit people and give it away and let them do the ministry. So creating a ministry for every level of maturity and commitment. And by the way, the best job, easiest job to recruit is a life group host and or hostess. Someone that works in the hallway outside the room and is looking for people that need a class, you know, and all they got to do is show up early, smile, and have a breath mint, and they qualify. So they don't have to have any kind of training or theological degree. So, but you know, that's a real important job. That's another first impression. If people are walking down your hallways and they don't know where they're going or where the adult classes are, and they finally find it, and because your signage isn't good, you know, you ought to have signage that says what's in this room, and it ought to look good, and it ought to be up to date. But let's say they do find the room and they walk in and they're just standing there and all the people are looking like they're having a lot of fun and good time, but nobody's coming over and greeting them. That's first impression. And my first impression is this isn't a friendly place, you know. And at that point, it's probably over. They're either going to look for another class or look for another church. I mean, it's that fast is how it happens. And it happens from the parking lot, doesn't it? Through the doors of the church, through the whole experience. And then if the signs are outdated and there's no directional signs on your property and people really can't find out what's going on, there's no map saying or thing, here's our adult groups and here's where they're located, handing that to people when they come through the door and you've never seen them before. You know, that's a huge part. Make job descriptions available. We have the playbooks that we have, and we have them in all of our life group rooms, but we also have the handouts of job descriptions, which I had intended for you guys to have a copy of these, but they didn't make it into your handout. But just handouts with all the job descriptions that I'm talking about. And we have them matched up with the spiritual gifts. And so people can look at their gift and go, okay, this job would match my gift. And I can actually do that in my class. What happens when everybody's serving in a class? What happens to that class? Ownership, much more fulfilled, probably going to be more faithful because they actually have a job to do, you know. And it's like the body, isn't it? The church is like a body, so is a life group like a body, and everybody has a different function, and everybody's functioning is going to be a lot more healthy body of believers. So the last thing here on ministry missions is challenge every group to have a ministry project and or mission project. We talk about 3 ways of involvement in missions. You can pray, you can give, you can go. And all 3 are important. We have the metro, national, and international areas. And so here's how this works in our church. We will have our missions team, Pastor Steve, myself, and finally the elders saying, okay, that we'll agree to that being an official partner. Well, let's say we adopt a partner like we had up here with Paul Fleming for a while, like we have with Greater Gresham. We adopt a partner church, and we pitch that partner to our life groups and say, we want you to pray about who you would like to adopt as a life group. And we may have 10 to 12, 15 classes that say we want to adopt Greater Gresham. And we're going to pray for them. We're going to send teams up there to help build their building, to do vacation Bible school, all those things. Well, it's different than just throwing it out church-wide and saying we want to do these things church-wide. No, we're focusing in now where there's synergy inside of a group and they're out serving together. And they feel like they're impacting the world together, and they have a lot to talk about when they come back together in class about all the ministry that happened. And so we have metro projects, and we say a metro is anything outside the walls of your classroom or your small group. And so that may be they're serving in the life of the church. And one of our biggest projects in that area is adopting a preschool class. Now, wouldn't that be a nice treat for your preschool coordinator, your volunteer, to say, it's not your job only to fill this class. We're going to get our adult class to send 2 people a week to your room to help the full-time person in there. That's what we do. We have a lot of classes that'll adopt a preschool class. That's a local project. Then we have classes that come up. You remember I was talking about the community outreach bags, the gift bags? We have a ladies class that comes up every month and puts those 500 bags together. You know, we don't have paid people doing that. It's a project of a life group. We have a life group come up every week and restock the auditorium with pens and envelopes in the back of the chairs. You know, we have an older senior adult life group comes up every Wednesday, and whatever mail-outs need to be done or things need to be stuffed or put together, different ministries will have it in that room, and they'll sign up and say, I need the volunteers this week. Well, they do it every week, and they're in there saving all of our assistants' time because they're doing it. So those are in-house projects. And you would have others, the grounds and different things, life groups taking that on. Then we have local projects like downtown Dallas, inner city, feeding the homeless. We have works we've done there. We have a community center we built in a Hispanic neighborhood down the road from us where life groups go. We have medical clinics, dental clinics, all these different things that life groups do. National, we talked about that. International, the same thing. Now, this will change the way your groups look at each other. A few years ago, I'm talking to this lady who just got back from Russia on one of our mission trips. I said, "Tell me about your trip." And she said, "I can tell you this, I've never worshiped like that before." She said it was a blizzard, and it was standing room only in this little church, and they raised the windows because there was about 100 people that stood out in the blizzard just to worship. And she said, "Do you think I'll come back to this church and ever complain about being cold?" Well, that's infectious to her class. When she hears someone griping about something that we're so spoiled about, she's like, "We don't even know. I just had the greatest worship of my life in a blizzard, and it was freezing cold in the church, and there wasn't anyone complaining." And so you see that kind of thing happen. I was in one of our senior adult classes one Sunday morning, and this college-age girl was going to make an announcement, and I didn't know who she was or why she was in there, and she gets up, and she can hardly even talk. She's got tears coming down her cheeks, and she says, "I just came today to thank this class. Because of you, my life will never be the same." She said, "You prayed for me, you gave so I could go on the college mission trip to China, and I just want to come as your missionary to tell you what God did in my life and how he used you in China." Well, there wasn't a dry in the room. And I walked out of there going, that's how that 75 and up age group class adopted China. They prayed and they gave because none of them were going to go, most likely, on a plane to China and serve for 2 weeks. But they had a great impact in China. So we see those kind of things happening every week at our church, those kind of reports. It's our people, and it's not us getting up and begging people to adopt mission trips. We got 10 classes that have already adopted that mission, that pastor. They know the pastor, they know the missionary, they know the kids' names, they know their birthdays, and they are going, praying, and giving. And it's a huge, huge blessing. Now, you may be going, well, in a smaller situation, maybe we're going to have one metro, one national, one international. And we're going to get our 4 adult classes to each adopt some of those. And that's wonderful. It's really just about doing something and giving it to the people to adopt and to do. Well, it will change the way people look at each other in your church. They will be less selfish if they're serving like that. Interactive teaching. And by the way, a lot of yours focus is probably going to be on the community. We focused on our community probably for the first 15 years we were there. We did very little missions outside of our area because we were trying to get the base built up. And then we're at a point now where we're touching the world, but you may be going, we need volume, we need people, we need to reach the community, we need to serve our community, and there's nothing wrong with that because you're already in a mission field, big time up here, where, what was it, 25% consider themselves religious in Portland, the lowest, in the city in America, say they're religious. You got a mission field right here, so how are we going to get organized and adopt things around us? Interactive teaching, not going to spend much time on that, but this is our outline that we use every week. Our teachers work out of the Hook, Book, Look, and Took outline for teaching. It's been around a long time. I didn't come up with it, but I certainly believe in it. The hook is, how do I wake the class up? And this works in preaching as well. How do I grab the congregation, the class's attention? one of the biggest hurdles we have is people are comfortable. They sit in their same seat. They're vegging out. They're thinking about lunch, or whatever. They're not where we are. You think about the Cowboys. I don't know why, but we still think they might win someday. But people are in a rut and they get comfortable, and we have to wake them up. So we tell our teachers, wake them up, do something, catch them off guard, make them think. So in our lessons every week, I write the hook, book, look, and took for all of our lessons every week. Been doing that 18 years almost now, and it's a lot of lessons every week, but every year. But I write 3 possible hooks at least every week, and one's always going to be a movie clip or a web clip that they can show in class, because visual learning is where we are today. That's how we learn. It's always going to be a story or something in the news or something like that. That's the hook. Book is getting into the Word, examining God's Word. It's not just a lecture about God's Word. It's about what's it saying for today. It's Q&A, it's discussion, it's getting them into other groups to dig into the Word. We tell our teachers, your job is not to give your people all the answers, it's to train them on how to find the answers. And so that's what book is. Looking at the passage, looking at your life. It's kind of an examination of where you're living. And took is, what's my homework assignment? What am I going to do with this passage this week? And how am I going to apply it in my life? And so we try to get our teachers to move through the lesson that way. Hook, book, look, and took. And that's how we do our lesson outlines for our teachers. By the way, a word on that. If you're interested in looking at, some of you already use our lessons and have used our lessons, but if you're interested in looking at that, you can go to Ministry Point. Doesn't have an E on the end of point. ministrypoint.org, and that's our website for our lessons. You can see all the different ones we've done in the past that churches can purchase, or you can be on the current week that we're on. June, we're starting the book of James, and we're just doing 10 weeks in the book of James, so we're not doing it verse by verse. We're taking some major topics. We did the book of Luke last year from mid-August to end of May, so we took all this whole time in the book of Luke. One of the big problems, criticisms that people have, say with Lifeway, is they take too big of chunks of Scripture. Well, that's something that reason we started doing our own lessons, because our teachers were saying that, they want us to cover 2 chapters in Romans in 20 minutes this week, and it doesn't work. So we will take longer in through the Bible a lot of times, and we usually try to do a New Testament we do three trimesters a year. The fall we'll do a New Testament, come back in the January to May, and maybe do an Old Testament. In the summer, we'll do a topical, because people are so in and out in the summer. We try to make them all sound topical, and every week kind of stand on its own, even though we may be working through a book of the Bible. Luke was a little bit different, that we took it that long. But if you're interested in knowing more about that, you can look at that website, and it's very affordable as well. It's $300 per series, and you can use it for as many groups as you want. So, literally you could get all your adult lessons for $900 a year. And I don't know what you spend on. If you buy all the curriculum and all the, kits and the pupil books and all those things, you can add up in a hurry what you may spend. The one that's delivered online, teachers just have an access code. They go online every week, get the lesson, they can print it out. There's a PowerPoint with the lesson every week in case they want to be visual. We believe in visual teaching so much that we have TVs and DVD players in all of our rooms. And we make a DVD that goes with our lesson outline. And so teachers can show clips, play music. We have music playing when people come into the rooms, and they have the announcements going that we want announced. So we're not wasting time in class for that. And so I was talking to a church one time, and they said we could never afford to do TVs and DVDs in all of our rooms. And I said, well, what do you spend on curriculum every year? And this is a good-sized church, wealthy church, and they said, we spend about $30,000 a year on adult curriculum. I said, well, you could get ours for $900 and have $29,000 left over to buy TVs. And they were like, we hadn't thought about that. And the other thing is the pupil book, very few will use those, and certain age groups still use them, and that's fine. But we still do the pupil book, but we deliver it online. So on Monday, our people get an email saying, here's a verse to read and 3 questions to ponder. Tuesday, they get another one. And so if they use that, they're getting more prepared for the lesson probably than they ever did before. Because most of our people, unless they're in a certain senior adult demographic that grew up with the pupil book, most of our younger ones just put them on the shelf. And you can go back and look in your rooms and see how many of them are stuck in the piano bench. You could build a new building with some of the cost. Yes? That's a great question. And when you have a growth group system like we have, that's the best way, because a lot of them leave their life group to go serve, but they can still be in their growth group. So they still get to fellowship and be with adults, even though they're not in there on Sunday. They're in the the children's area serving. They can still be. Most of them left a life group. They were originally in a life group, and they went out to serve, and so they just stay connected to that life group they left, and they can still be in a growth group, which meets during the week. We also do a life group on Wednesday night for people that serve in the children and the youth. So we have every week on Wednesday night, we have a couple that teaches a life group of children and youth workers, and that's worked really well. Gives them that adult Bible study. All right, fellowship. We're not going to spend much time on that at all. It's really just creating a sense of community. Koinonia, we talked about getting people all on the team, giving them a sense of this is my church within the church. That's all about creating a sense of community. Encouragement is this whole accountability thing. And basically, we have a card. It looks like that. That's one side of it. We just tell folks, keep that in your Bible. Get together however often you can. Men, maybe you want to have breakfast together. Ladies, you're going to say, hey, y'all got to ditch the kids on us on Tuesday morning, so Tuesday night is women's night, and you get the kids at home, and we're going to have a women's gathering and work through some accountability encouragement. We didn't really want it to become another time for another long Bible study kind of thing. We just wanted to get them into God's Word. So first thing on there is, what's your favorite verse and what did you discover in your reading? So maybe a guys group will say, let's read the book of John. Let's read 5 chapters a week and get together and talk about it. First thing they usually do is, did everyone get their reading done? Well, I only got 3 chapters. I only did 2. Okay, well, we're going to repeat those 5 for next week because we don't want to leave you behind. There's some built-in encouragement to get into the Word. Second thing on there is their impact names. What better place than men with men, ladies with ladies, to talk about each other's lost friends and relatives and be praying for each other's lost friends and reminding each other about these lost people you're trying to build a relationship with. That's what that is. Number 3 is encouragement questions on the back of that card, which I don't think is on there on the next slide, but, on the back of this card, that's what it looks like. You've got some tough questions that you're not going to ask in a co-ed group. For example, have your words been God-honoring this week? Refraining from gossip, profanity, coarse joking, lying, slander, outburst, etc. Have you been exposed to sexually alluring material or allowed your mind to entertain inappropriate thoughts about someone who's not your spouse? I mean, that doesn't happen anywhere else in your church, does it? But isn't that where real growth happens? I mean, think about it. It doesn't happen anywhere else in our church unless we have a process to get people down to that level because they're not being honest, And usually there's places on there for them to write their own questions, and the last one is, did you lie today about anything? And I was talking to a group one time, and it was at a church in Mississippi, and this like 85-year-old gentleman, I mean, right when I was talking about this, stood up. He said, "Young fella," I said, "Appreciate that. Young fella, whatever happens in my life between me and God, I don't need to tell another man about it." And he sat down. As quick as he sat down, this guy, like 25 years old, stood up and he said, "Mr. Jones, that may be good for you. I know you've been a Christian for like 50, 60 years. He said, "I'm a brand new believer, just got married, expecting my first child. I need all the help I can get. If I can have brothers walking through with me, helping me, I need it." And I thought, sometimes it's a generational thing. You know, the guys that have been Christians a long time and are a little more seasoned may not see as much need for it. But don't discount the young ones that need it and the young believers that need it. They may be old chronologically aged, but they may be babies in Christ. They need someone to walk with them in this journey. So that's why we try to get down to that level in encouragement/accountability. So, summing up what we've talked about, you've got the whole assimilation process. People come to the big church, and they come and finally find a life group, and hopefully there's someone welcoming them at the door, getting them registered. And by the way, we don't do like we used to in Southern Baptist churches. My dad used to tell me about, "Oh yeah, you have to come 3 times before we'll ask you to join." You know, sitting like a country club. You know, we tell our folks, ask them the first day they come, "Would you like to join our class? If you do, you only have to fill this thing out one time. You know, go ahead and join." They may go, "No, we might want to visit that one next door, you know, next week and just try it out." Okay, but they at least felt wanted, you know. Name tags, I've already talked about that. It's not just about being here and connecting on life group level, but we also do things called growth groups, and that's another way to connect. Ministry, we have a place for you to serve in our life group, as well as here's what we do outside the walls of our life group. Here's how we serve together. That just tells people right off, this is a serving church. This is a serving life group. I'm not just going to come sit and soak, you know. Then we have what we call the fully developing follower. So the life group system is our assimilation, disciple-making system where people begin as curious, convinced, and they become a contagious contributor as they go and reach another lost friend or reach someone that's not connected and help them get connected. So it does work if you work it. And I know on the front end when you're hearing a model like this, you're going, that sounds like, yeah, it's going to be work, a lot of work, but in the long run it's going to end up better. But it takes work at the beginning. You may have to, first thing you do is go find you a significant volunteer and get them up to speed on this kind of thing and then resource them to death and let them get it going. All right, I'm going to quit with this. How to multiply your groups. Because if you ever look at your church and go, our church is stuck, we're not really growing, we're not really reaching any new people, look at how many new groups you've started. Because if you don't start new groups, you're not going to reach new people. It's pretty cut and dry there. Existing groups, I said this yesterday, if you've been together 2 or more years, have become ingrown and most likely stagnant. And that's about as big as they're going to get. Because it's hard for a new person to break into that group. My dad, one time when he first went to the church in Austin, there was a booming young adult class. And he went and said to the teacher, "We really like for y'all to help birth a class out of here." And they were like, "Don't even talk to us about that. We love our class. We have the warmest fellowship. Don't even think about it." Well, they invited him to a fellowship in the teacher's home, and he didn't know it, but they basically put him in the middle of the room, started chewing him out. How dare you come to our church thinking you're going to break up our class? We have the warmest fellowship. We love each other. Don't even think about it. He said he sat there and just listened for about 20 minutes and took it. And finally, this guy stood up in the back of the living room, and he said, "My wife and I are new to this church, and we're new to this class, and we don't feel welcome in here at all. We volunteered to help start a new class." And another guy stood up and said, "We don't feel welcome in this group either. We want to go with them." And so by the time the night was over, the whole attitude had changed. Well, the group was friendly. They were just friendly to each other. And if someone new walked through that door, it was really tough to break in. You need to go back and look at your classes. Would a new person even want to go into that door? You know? Are they also... I'm against tables in classrooms because everybody gets their little table. There's, it's really that's another barrier for someone to get into that room because everybody's so comfortable. Plus, you're locked into how the room's arranged, and you think you're full. You take the table out, and all of a sudden you can double your space. We can only get 10 in here. Take the table out, you can get 20 in there. So think about that as well. But that's another barrier. Make birthing a new life group a core value. You may have some really good life groups right now. Maybe you got one. You need to concentrate on that one teacher to say, we need more like you. What can we do to get there? Will you be willing to help me train up a leader, a future teacher? Will you be even willing to help send people out and help birth this class? Because God's going to replace them in your room. And you may have a few that'll do that. I'm not going to read all those, but recognize that birthing creates new leadership. It really does. In the existing class, you got to replace leaders, and you got to have new leaders. Use the proper methods. This is why I like the life group. You're getting people assimilated faster. Then you got the growth groups, and that's where the best friends are, right? In the growth group, they should be closest. So we will have a teacher who's been trained to become a teacher, an apprentice teacher, and we announced they're going to move to this new location on this coming Sunday, and this growth group is going to go with them to help be the core of a new life group. So the life group's not starting with just the teacher and his wife sitting in a room. There might be, 8 people in there from the first day. And I had a young adult class a few years ago. I walked down the hall and I looked through the window, and they had 5 couples kneeling, and the rest of the class was laying hands over them and praying. And I thought, I wonder what they're doing, And after class, I caught the teacher. I said, "What were y'all doing?" He said, "We were having a commissioning over these 5 couples because next week they're going down the hall and starting a new church." And I thought, that's the picture. The teacher wasn't going, "Give me a bigger room, don't dare touch us." He was going, "We're going to bless them with some." Now, sometimes teachers will bless them by sending all their weird people out, and they enjoy that. But that's the concept. It's multiplication, it's birthing, and you can do that easier when it's an ongoing thing, as I mentioned at the beginning. All right, our time is up. I've enjoyed being with you guys and seeing some familiar faces again. And hopefully I'll see you again. And I really appreciate Joe allowing Steve and I to come and be with you. And Joe and the Northwest Convention folks brag on y'all a lot, but saying y'all are some of the most strategic convention people I've ever known, and do some of the most practical training and practical meetings and the clusters and all those things. Really impressed with all that they provide for you guys and do. And I appreciate Joe and his leadership.